Ba-dum, bum, ba-da-da-dum, dum, bum, ba-dum.
Give me a pizza with extra cheese.
Extra cheese.
And hold the tomato sauce.
Hold the tomato sauce.
And hold the crust.
Hold the crust.
Hey, Jimmy, give me a cheese with nothing.
Nothing.
Now you can have the best part of the pizza without the pizza. Polly-O string cheese, all natural, individually wrapped cheese snacks.
Is this what you want?
Sheogorath is a madman. That's kind of his whole deal. And yet, it does seem that there is a method to the madness. While Lorcan is known for pulling the biggest prank of all time, resulting in the world getting made, Sheogorath is the trickster god of the Elder Scrolls, an iconic cheese lover, and he has the best voice in the entire series. He's probably one of the most iconic Daedric princes around, and in some ways, while he is mad, he's sort of the guy we know the most about on a personal level. That doesn't make his personality any easier to understand though. That might also be because we technically become him in Oblivion, but we'll get to that later. For today, we are going on a deep dive into the lore behind Sheogorath, the Daedric prince of madness and creativity, the lord of the
Hello,
River
hello
Air, the raver,
guys.
the comforter of men,
Hi,
and the
Sir
scuba cat.
Flo.
Wait. The
Walang
scuba
pasok
cat.
yarn
This
bukas.
guy's
Ha?
also a
Anong
narcotic
pasok-pasok?
drug house cat
Pinapasok
on
nga
top
nila
of
ako
everything
kanina
else.
sa office eh.
Oh man, this is going to be a madhouse.
Wonderful! Time for a celebration!
Bawi lang.
So, this is episode 4 of my Daedric Prince series, and if you've watched the others, you'll know that I usually begin by talking about what the specific Daedric Prince actually is, although it's a
May
bit more
pasok pa rin
complicated with Sheogorath here. I
Yes.
usually go on about
Totoo.
Etarda, Aedra, Daedra, and the Magna Gi,
Ah,
but you can watch my other
Mag-office
Daedric Prince
kayo, Sir
videos
Ja?
for that, because it's not the most relevant for Sheogorath here. Now he is the
Or
Lord of the
office
Shivering
on
Isles,
site siya?
also
On
known
site?
as the
Ganun
Madhouse,
ba?
although this
Oh my
realm
god,
didn't
on
always
site
belong to
na.
him, and seems to be older than his
Dapat
existence.
dyan hindi na
Kind of.
pinapayagan mag-on
You
site eh.
see, Sheogorath might technically be the youngest of the Daedric princes,
Work from home
and
na
yet
lang ka.
he is also the most
Ang
dangerous.
daming mga
If you've played the
nagsuspend
Shivering
nga ng
Isles
ano
before,
eh.
you more
Oo
than
pala, may
likely
bago
know
nga
the
pala tayo
story
dito
well.
sa server.
But Uncle Sheo here, the Mad God,
Sir
actually began
Hypens.
as the complete opposite.
Nirecruit
Jigalag,
ni
the Daedric Prince
Papi
of Order.
Paps.
Before recorded history, there was a time when
Bakit kasi
Jigalag had
kailangan
grown
ng
incredibly
Super
powerful, so
Blossom?
much so that every Daedric Prince grew wary of him. Some Jigalag Glazers even feel that, at this point, the
Office ka
Chrome
linis.
Dome over here was
Oh
the
my
greatest
god,
of the Daedric
ingat
Princes.
talaga.
His influence of order spreading across the seas
Dapat
of
meron
Oblivion.
tayong
And
swimming
apparently
trunks.
Oblivion has seas, for some reason.
Swimming
It
trunks.
might be a case of
Pampalusong.
space
What's
being the
this
sea,
sub for 2
kind
months
of like how
audible?
space in D&D lore is
2
called
months
the Astral
audible.
Sea.
Ano to?
But either way, the other
Premium.
Daedric princes weren't all too happy about
Wow.
this, so they got together
Kung
despite their
mag-gift
differences.
ako,
You see,
ang
Jigalag's
mahal ng
idea of
aking
order is where
subs.
nothing really is allowed to happen. Everything's just husks. And we get an idea
Kaya
of
mo di ka
this
naman
through his
yung
subjects,
subs.
which we'll get into later. And
Ay,
it's believed that
wala man
Jigalag wanted to
tayong
bring this
pambayad sa
brand of
pang
order to
subs.
everything. So, with their powers
Ay,
combined,
ay,
the
ay.
Daedric princes put a
Okay, so
curse
for
on Jigalag to
now,
stop him, turning him into
clear
his
out muna
opposite, the
natin
thing
to.
that he hated most. Madness and creativity incarnate.
Di na ako
He
nakuha sa
became
opportunities.
Sheogorath, got some drip, and transformed the Shivering
Okay
Isles.
lang yan,
Although
Sir
the transformation
Joe.
was only roughly
Lock natin kaya
99.999%
itong Torch
complete,
Mats.
that might
Torch
seem
Master.
specific, but at the end of every era, Jigalag gets control of his body again in an event known as the Grey March, in which he would exert his power to bring order to the Shivering
Nakaos.
Isles once more, only to turn back into
Grabe natulog
Sheogorath
sa
right
kwarto
after,
ng
where
Devil
madness would once again
Prince.
spread. The whole end of an era thing always felt a little odd to me, because the declarations of an end of an era tend to be quite arbitrary. The time between each isn't
Torch
consistent.
Master mod.
Still, imagine waking up potentially once every
Torch
1,000 years
Master.
with everything in a mess after a
Oh,
mad
pwede pala
bender.
mag-dreadlock.
Well, at least Jigalag's consciousness slept well, and if you want to sleep just as well, if not better, That's what today's sponsor is for, Manta Sleep. Manta
Ay,
Sleep is
putik.
here to make your naps and kips so good that even a baby would be jealous, and trust me, babies can get jealous, giving you the energy to go full Sherry Gorath in the day, while bringing Jiggalag's order to your nights. They sell these sleep masks with these eye cups that you can adjust to fit your nose and use to alleviate pressure from your eyes. Speaking of
Grabe na
your eyes, your
tulog
vision
sa
will be pitch
kwartos
black,
ng Bibilab.
meaning that pesky summer sun is going
Ay,
to creep in
this,
and wake you up at
speaking
5
of
in the
Bibilab,
morning.
ako ay...
You get up when you need to get up, and in the
Wait,
summer, there's these cool crates that have
wait,
been a personal favourite.
wait lang, Nox. Nung Sabado, ako ay may kwento. Nung Sabado, ako ay nag-touch grass. And after touching grass, I touched my love. I touched my love. Bakit touch? Torch. Ay, yes. Ako ay with torch. Torch mat still. Wait, nagsasalita ka ba? Yes, Sir Pops. Ay, nawala na pala si Sir Pops. Ay, lumipad na pala siya. Ay, sana all tinatouch. Ay, hanggang touch lang. Frozen Pearl. Oh, Feral Flame. Torch Master. Chandelier. Kung gusto ko ng dread lamp daw. Ay, Squid Bats and Ocelots lang pala to. Aksa yan. Itong ano. Oh my god, chromatic field. Echo gem, like what the hell. Dalawa lang. Dalawa lang. Okay, so, far na. 64 blocks. Lagay natin siya. Lalagay natin siya. Dini. Muna. Protect. Dito. Lagyan natin siya dito. Kasi dahil sila ay mapanira. Naiinis kasi ako. Ang daming nag-spawn dito na zombie. Na hindi ko alam paano sila napupunta dyan. Ayun dyan. Alam ko naka-off ang griefing ng ang map griefing pero kita mo ba yung disc? Game low ang 16k. Creeper griefing na ata. Creeper griefing. Actually, okay lang naman yung creeper griefing. Pero, nainis kasi ako dun sa zombie, nakasira sila ng pinto ko isang beses habang naka-AFK ako. Pinasok nila yung bahay. ata, parang ganun. Buti pa bahay pinapasok. Well, personally gusto ko bahay lang pinapasok. Tingnan natin kung may mag-spawn pa dito. Tsaka yung naiinis kasi ako, naiinis din ako sa anong tawag to. Bisitahin kasi. Bisitahin kasi Sir Robs. Go. Tara, makibisita din ako. Makibisita. Mahal ang item or mas mura pa disc. Actually, yeah. Sana nakikita ko. Oo. Eto. Saan to? Eto. Pulverizer. Kaya, so, di ko gets paano need pa ni Serobs na ano, ng mechanism. Ah, okay, basic. Kasi alam ko, may halos same lang na ano eh. May halos same lang siya sa thermal series. Pipes. Wait, may pipes ba? Kasi muna kayong iron furnace, mahal tuloy ng pipes. Energy pipe. Okay, so ang kanyang power ay nandito. Igneous extruder. Tapos, may apat na tayo ng magmatic. Yung magmatic niya is automatic na napupunta sa redstone flux cell. Tapos meron pa siyang open na magmatic dynamo dito. Magma crucible. Oh, naka-netherite furnace siya. Oh. Ito, unlock ko din to. Netherite furnace. Ah, inaugment niya. Mukhang okay, input tapos output dito. Itong red na to is parang output. Ano punta dito? Output. Output mapupunta sa reds. Advanced Energy Cube. Ah, okay. Nakikita ko na yung vision ni Sir Props. Bakit nag-unlock siya ng mechanism? Sync. Ah, ito yung ano niya. Wow. 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 Grip. Sir, may griefer, sir. May sana item box pero ang mahal ng exporters. Uy. My God. Gawa kaya akong arena. Scaling issue. Ay, wey. Parang Battle Royale. Ay, o, parang nakita ko nga yun. Parang saya nun. Siguro kapag mga nakarami tayo. Ito yung kay Jerry. Yung na automatic. Automatic na show. Cool. Wither skeleton. Oh my god. Automatic siya. Ay, ang mahal kasi ng aking Uy, dodge. Uy, dodge. Wait, anong ability yan? Alam ko may nakikita kung hindi siya arcane. Ayun, nice bolt. Wait, mana cost lang pala niya to. Kaya pala, ay, naka-off ba ang friendly fire? Ay, hindi naman eh. One hit. Two hit. Sakit. Parang masusar sa thorns. Ornate chest. Ay, wow. Bukas ka. Ay, iyak ako kay syrups niya. Magnanakaw na lang ako. lang ako. Netherite. Grabe, dalawang netherite furnace. Tatlo. Caught in. Oh my god, may automatic. What? What? Okay, so, oh my god. Na-miss ako sa ginawa ni syrups dito Okay. Ito, thermal extruder. Yes. Kaya pala siya naka-item pipes para panglipat sa Oh wait, so if ang thermal igneous extruder since mag-insert siya ng lava from here siya here, kakain siya ng water. Wala. Kakain siya ng water so mag-generate siya ng stone. At mapupunta siya dito sa drawer na to. Tapos connect item types ulit na mapupunta sa auto trader. So infinite emeralds. Like, oh my god. Infinite money. So, itong nether furnace na ito ang para sa gold na mag-generate somewhere here. Metallurgic. Chemical viewer. Yung lava, ito yung nagpa-power sa kanyang hatiw. So, if ever naman kailangan pa rin mag-unlock ng gantong pipes. Do alam ko may sariling pipes ang thermal series. May sarili siyang cable. Wala. Ay. Lulusong pa ulit. Oh. Sige, Sergio. Nang makapagpahinga ka. Huwag mo akong gayahin na malakas ang loob magpaalam sa unit head namin na kung pwedeng umuwi ng maaga. Oo nga, work from home na yan. Work from home na yan. Ay, nakalock pala. Lock natin. Lock. Okay, lock. Disk drive. Kaya ako may disk manipulator para malagay sila lahat sa isang storage disk. Gusto ko sanang gumawa pa ng isa pang 4K na storage part. Kaso napakamahal ng 1. Pwede ko naman siya gawin na kasi meron akong isa pa. So, ang problema ito. Ilang chromatic steel, dalawang. Doable. Nice. 4K. Kaso dalawa naman ang kulang. Ayoko na. Itong 1K. This. Gawin muna natin yung farmer time 43. Alam ko ang disk drive is parang siyang priority dito. I think. Maraming atang wood box kay Sir George. Quiet tayo. Nandiyan pa siya nanonood pa siya nag-stream. Nagbabalak ako. Nagbabalak ako. What's this? Yung ano. Yung Vault Totem na ano. Ability. Maganda yung kapag ano, naka-party sa Vault. Parang kaso may ebidensya siya. May witness tayo guys, may witness tayo. May apat tayong live viewers na witness. Load ka sa mga aso. Ay. Alam kong meron tayong bota ni Pots mod, pero parang mas gusto ko talagang magganto. By the way, pinintay ni Pops yung isang wolf ko, hindi ko kanya napapalit. Alam mo, actually, same. Meron pang isa pang... May isa rin siyang napatay sa akin na wolf. Like last week lang ata yun. Sorry, narinig kita ng word. Wala bang manghihingi sa inyo ng ano dyan? Gamit. Ang dami kong raw materials. Ako ba naman napag-isipang Ay, wait. Dirt. Sabi ko sa stream time, then mag-ano ako. I-figure out ko yung thermal series, pero pupunuin ko yung butas na meron sa akong base. Sa akong base. Kaya saan ba ako magmamina ng... Gusto ko sanang mag-ano ng gemstone. Ay, ng jewel pala. Itong axing tsaka shoveling sa pickaxe. Kaso wala akong gemstone. Meron pa naman akong immortal picking finger. Wait, nasan pala yung ano ko? Vitra. I'm sorry sa lugar na to, mawawala ang inyong dirt. Huwag lang sana ako mamatay. Ano yun? Oh my god. Oh my god. Parang feeling ko naglalag ako. Yep, naglalag na ako. Uy, what's that? Cut sandstone. Random structure lang pala. I would like to thank this mountain for sacrificing itself for me. Pero wag tayo mag-iwan ng floating trees. Wala, di mo kami love you, hate me. Para sa akin pagbigyan kasi binigyan ako ng 16k na mod na disc. Up. Bakit to? Huwag kang istorbo. Huwag kang istorbo sa aking skeleton. Nagnanakaw ako ng lupa ng iba. Ako ay wait, so this is moss. Sana meron namang spore blossom around here. Talagang underground lang siya. Ah, oh my god, ang tulis naman ng mountain na to. Kakalbuhin nga natin. Kunin natin yung moss. Sana. Acacia. Acacia. Uy, ano. I'm sorry, future players na mag-change sa server. May bundok akong ginawang flat. This is not natural. Sige, magpahinga kami for news. At kaya isang wrist wheel sa ating mga alipin ng salapi. Ay putek. Good night, good night. Tayo ay gigising na maaga para sa ating mga bayarin. Para sa credit card. Puno na ba ang? Ma. Ay, shucks. Ay. Anong ginawa ko? Anong ginawa ko? Ano ba yan? Elytra. Fine. Ay, wait. Pwede pala ito ano. Kala ko ano yun. Ano ba pala? Ba't kasi walang turns yung kinuha kong armor? Though, ayoko din man kasi. Bakit nga ba walang turns? Okay na siguro ito. Bakit walang assign na drawer ang aking fireworks? Succeed. Bala ko. Give me all the dirt nang ma-fill up na natin ang ating pool. Wait, nasaan ang aking background music?
Rid of mine. especially because Pollen is assaulting the senses just as much as Sheogorath does. So if you want the energy of the Cheese Prince, and yes, that is somehow one of his official titles, check out Manta Sleep and use code NOX for 10% off to upgrade your sleep, giving you that well-rested perk in real life. Anyway, back to the video. It should be noted that Sheogorath despises the idea of his counterpart just as much as Jyggalag does. You can see this in the Shivering Isles itself, since the Prince of Order once had a great library where he organised and housed his knowledge, but the library was burned by Sheogorath. Almost all traces of Jyggalag were removed by the Lord of Madness, save for two things: his Daedric artifact, the Sword of Jyggalag, and the former Chamberlain, Daius, who eventually became mortal and acts as a sort of oracle, using the order and patterns of what has happened to predict the future. Even Sheogorath's forces in the Shivering Isles are vastly different to what Jyggalag has running around. Jyggalag has his knights and priests of order, and these guys weirdly aren't knights or priests at all. They're more so like different units of automaton, and are entirely soulless. They are essentially robots that look like Crystal and act on Order's will, but because Order is seen as without emotion, the forces of Order are essentially a legion of crystal machines. They have more in common with Dwemer automatons than basically any other force. We're not even really sure if these guys are Daedra. They don't have any thoughts, and Jyggalag can practically pull them out of thin air, it seems. It could even mean that he has an infinite army, acting and spawning from his will. Compare this to Sheogorath's subjects, and while they lack the forces of Order's efficiency, they aren't at all lacking in personality. For one, there are the Golden Saints, also known as the Auriel, who are a race of Daedra that seem to really hate mortals. They are also fiercely matriarchal, which is odd because they are the most loyal servants of a man, and are fans of reverse sexism. Actually, no, they don't like men, so I guess it's still just sexism. We're getting off topic. These saints are meant to be a bit of a mockery. They're golden and gleaming, portraying this vision of a celestial guardian. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're meant to be a parody of Meridia's Aurorans, but are very much characterised by their personality, by their hatred of mortals, loyalty to Sheogorath, and fierceness in battle. But they also have a rivalry with Uncle Sheo's other half of the army, the Dark Seducers, or the Mazken. These lot seem to like mortality more, but are masochistic, so, do with that what you will. Oh, no, actually don't. Some of you might like that, you freaks. The two are distinctly split into two halves, with the Saints placing the realm of Mania, the more light-hearted side of the Shivering Isles, representing Sheogorath's madness and its brightness, while the Seducers patrol Dementia, the darker half, representing Sheogorath's violence. There are also a bunch of random things sort of just roaming the Shivering Isles, which you should expect from Sheogorath's realm, including flesh atronachs, and giant chickens. Yeah, checks out. What I really want you guys to note is the difference in the people of the Shivering Isles under the two rulers. With Sheogorath, they're actually people. There are rivalries, cultures, random giant chickens, and a clash of personalities. Strangely, although he's all about madness, the Dark Seducers and Golden Saints are known to have a very structured society, although this is all likely in place to facilitate Sheogorath's own mad ideas. Compare this to being under Jyggalag, and there's nothing but husks and efficiency. There's no real people. It's like comparing the joy and chaos of a full football stadium and just two rival fans chanting at each other, versus the stagnation of an Amazon warehouse. Still, this duality would not last forever, and this leads us to the events of Oblivion and the Shivering
Pahiram
Isles
naman ako na,
DLC.
hindi ko pala pwedeng magalaw yung masakali kasi wala akong movement.
Now, I won't go into the events that much, because because you can just play the Shivering Isles. But as it's the end of an era, specifically after Martin Septim predictably dies, because, you know, Sean Bean, we, Michael Cyrodiil, yep, we're going with Michael, ends up in the Shivering Isles, with Sheogorath looking to use us to prevent the Grey March. With the help of Daius, the Chamberlain we mentioned before, a new staff of Sheogorath was made to give the hero of Kvatch the powers of a mad god, effectively mantling him. With this power, Oblivion's protagonist confronted Jiggalag and the forces of Order during the Grey March, leading Sheogorath's own army, and slapped them silly. In doing so, the Lord of Order called a timeout, and so the cycle was broken, and Jiggalag was free from his curse, being separate from Sheogorath for the first time in, well, a very, very long time. Is then assumed that the Sheogorath that Jon Skyrim meets is actually the hero of Kvatch, since the Grey March had no longer happened, and neither the Prince of Order nor the Prince of Chaos is bound as one. This would also explain why Skyrim's design for Sheogorath is slightly different, with the longer hair. Or, you know, people just want to grow out his hair. Either way, Sheogorath still feels like the same guy we've always known, and even has the legendary Wes Johnson voicing him to this day, even without his other half. But that brings up another question: what happened to his other half? We know that at the end of the Shivering Isles, Jiggalag is free and leaves to roam Oblivion, although his activities remain a mystery. Even 200 years later, it seems that Jiggalag is yet to have an influence that can be felt in Tamriel. He doesn't get a Daedric quest in Skyrim, despite theoretically being capable of giving
So
one, and
peaceful.
he even has an artifact up
Walang
for grabs,
mobs.
which we could have
Storm
used.
kasi sila
The
sa
Sword of Jiggalag. I mean, he doesn't
aking
get the sword in
ginagawa.
Anniversary Edition, but again, no Jiggalag Daedric quest. So if he's not having much of an influence on Tamriel, what is he doing? Did Todd just forget about him? Well, according to his former Chamberlain, Daius, Jiggalag could go on a bit of a vengeance spree, taking revenge on those who cursed him, which would be literally every other Daedric prince, although he may never return to the Shivering Isles. To be fair, he doesn't have a bone to pick with the new Sheogorath, technically Michael Cyrodiil, so why would he ever come back? Kurt Coleman, who was one of the main names at Bethesda until 2023, claims that Jiggalag's freedom could completely change the power dynamics in Oblivion, which makes sense given that the Chrome Dome of Order was enough of a concern to worry all other Daedric princes. Once he gathers power for a bit, he could be a seismic problem for everyone else. Maybe even an Elder Scrolls 6
Ano ba ito?
antagonist. I would
Nahihilo.
personally love to see him again, especially now that he's no longer connected to Sheogorath. For the time being, there's no real answer as to where Jiggalag ended up, but the legendary quest mod, Vigilant, takes Daius
Sir,
and
building
Coleman's
gadget
idea
ka
of
na, di
shaking
ka
up Oblivion's
magsisisi.
power dynamics, and having the Prince of Order go on a revenge
Yes,
run.
iniisip.
Spoilers for Vigilant,
Isip
by the
ko
way,
siya
but do yourself
kanina.
a favour and download this mod. It's really good. So, in the final act of Vigilant, we find out that Jiggalag
Bumiyahe.
seeks to find himself a new realm in Oblivion, and he sets his eyes on Cold Harbour, aka the realm of Molag Bal, with the invasion being described as another Grey March. With a seemingly
Building
endless army with the
gadgets. Oh
forces
my
of Order,
god,
there's
to
not a lot
research.
that can theoretically stop Jiggalag. So this scenario dreamed up in Vigilant is entirely possible. To be honest, I think Bethesda might just ignore Jiggalag, since he's separate from Sheogorath now. But let's look at another difference between the two. We all know that Jiggalag hates the other Daedric princes, but what about Sheogorath? What about his relationship with them? Well, it's not so cut and dry, and he famously has the 16 Chords of Madness, essentially him pranking the other Daedric princes using a mixture of mad creativity and witty tactics. We unfortunately only have 3 of these accords, 6, 9 and 12, but you'll get a strong idea of what Sheogorath is all about in these 3 volumes. So let's begin numerically with a summary of Volume 6, Hircine.
I am the spirit of the hunt. Just one glimpse of the glorious star that your kind calls Hercene.
I've already done a video on Hercene if you want a stronger sense of who he is, but for the sake of this video, just remember that he's Lord of the Hunt, and is a reasonably fair prince who values sportsmanship. He is used to using trickery in his own hunts, and as a result he's always up for a game, and this is what made him a pretty easy victim of the Cheese Prince. On the 5th day of mid-year, essentially Elder Scrolls' version of the 5th of June, Sheogorath found himself chilling in the peaks of Skyrim, and asked Hercene
Sana
for a
may
parley,
pindit-pindit
a
ka
bit
na
of a
lang,
chat.
oh.
The 5th of mid-year is known as Hercene's
Alam mo,
Summoning Day,
yung
so he didn't
next
really have
kong
much of a choice
i-unlock
but to
talaga
show
is yung
up.
building
Although he
gadgets.
was intrigued by Uncle Sheo's summoning,
Para at least
Sheogorath,
lahat
probably with the
ng
toothiest grin
research,
imaginable, challenges Hercene to a bet
para
in
at
which
least
both
lahat ng
princes are to produce a
research
beast to represent them.
team
And
meron
in
akong
3
na-unlock.
years, on the same day, these beasts
Tapos
are to
binubutol mo
battle
pa
to
sa
the
Vault
death
Compass.
as champions on behalf of their princes. Hercene, believing this to suit him better than Sheogorath, agrees and goes right back home to the hunting grounds to
Ay.
start working on his Pokemon. Because, yes, Sheogorath essentially challenged him to a Daedric Pokemon battle. Knowing the Lord of Madness to be a trickster, Hercene brought out his legendary Pokemon, an abomination of an ancient Daedroth, whom he imbued with lycanthropy, making it an unspeakable horror beyond even his greatest hunters. Understandably, Hercene went into the bout with Sheogorath 3 years later pretty confident, finding his opponent chilling on a rock. He brought out his Daedroth, whom I will call... Cupcake. Yes, Cupcake. Now, Cupcake, probably flexing his muscles, was just as surprised as his master to see Sheogorath standing aside to reveal a tiny colourful bird as his champion, perched on the rock, its chirp barely audible in the gusts. As soon as the Lord of Madness made his grand reveal, it was on sight, and Cupcake came charging in, slamming into the rock, leaving only rubble. But this was not the end for the bird. Let's pick a name for it. Megatron. Yes, Megatron. Now, Megatron had deftly evaded Cupcake's assault and floated onto his bloody maw, chirping as if nothing in the world bothered it. Sheogorath was trying his best not to laugh as Cupcake looked pissed, howling and falling for Megatron's rage bait. In that rage, it began to claw at his own snout, trying to tear Megatron apart, but all Cupcake managed to do was blind itself, tearing its own maw to shreds. Hercene watched on as his greatest monstrosity proceeded to destroy itself, as Megatron, seemingly oblivious to the bat, simply chirped away, unharmed. Angry but beaten, Hercene burned Cupcake's corpse, shouted some curses so bad that they still linger in the mountains to this day, and went home. After Hercene's departure, Sheogorath decided that a change of scenery was required, and that he should visit the warm seaside of the Abessian coast, with little Megatron in tow, Tamriel's tiniest champion. It's almost a wholesome story, the Skyrim equivalent of the tortoise and the hare, but the next is, less wholesome. Volume 9, Vanilla.
Quickly, kill him now. Kill him and claim the skull for your own. Vermina commands you.
The tale begins with a writer named Darius Shano, running as fast as he could. He knew not why he ran, other than that he must, sprinting across acres of featureless grassland.
Nang gigil.
On and on
trip.
he ran, and ran, and ran. In truth, he slept, and in his room, watching him sleep, were a pair of Daedric princes, Sheogorath, the Lord of Madness, and Vermina, Prince of Dreams and Nightmares. Shano was a disciple of Vermina, afflicted by her dreams, and her dreams caused him to produce literary brilliance in his poems as an emerging bard. Sheogorath seemed unimpressed by this man's alleged brilliance, stating that greatness should come with its fair share of hatred, suggesting that this was what Darius Shano was missing. Firmina agreed with the mad god, and from that came a bet. The Dreamweaver and the Comforter of Men would each take a decade to make Darius Shano hated and infamous. Believing her powers to be better suited for the task, Firmina started first, and during Shano's 19th year, he became afflicted with the worst night terrors that the Dreamweaver could muster. Horrors beyond comprehension plagued his nights, his dreams filled with fear, and yet he awoke without any, for he believed these visions to be a gift from his lady. So horrible were these visions that they began to take shape in his work, being reproduced with his characters. The terrible cruelty and violence of his writings revolted and fascinated his readers, and while this brought him his fair share of hatred, some loved the vulgarity Shano displayed. His popularity grew, his hatred and infamy spreading word of his work across Tamriel. But in his 29th year, Firmina's time was over, and the night terrors stopped. For the first time in a decade, Darius Shano slept soundly and deeply, but in his waking hours, he found his work without its inspiration. He cried out to his lady, the Dreamweaver, demanding to know why she abandoned him, yet received no answer. The vulgarity, violence, and terror of his work vanished, and with it waned interest in him and his writing. He grew resentful
Yeah,
of his
consider
mistress.
enough.
No, not resentful, hateful. Then that hate became ridicule, then transformed into disbelief. He concluded that Firmina had never visited him at all, that his
Graveyard.
night terrors were of his own making, the product of a sick mind, and now that his mind had righted itself, he doubted the gods themselves. He became
Tropa,
heretical and bitter toward the public that worshipped the
oh
gods,
my god,
and his work
dami-dami pala
became
tayong
centered on mockery of
ngayong
the
linggo
divine.
Baka
From
nag-work
this came greater outrage that
artiko.
eclipsed even his old work, and over he struck a nerve with the wider public. As his body of work grew, rising in scorn, he wrote The Noblest Fool at age 39, mocking the Emperor Tiber Septim,
Pero feeling ko
joining
lalag
the
na
Nine
pinapanood.
Divines cult, as he called it. But an old enemy, the local king of Dania, accused him of sacrilege and had him executed, the crowd cheering. After 20 years, the Dreamweaver and the Mad One met before Darius Shano's headless corpse. Firmina had been waiting eagerly for this meeting, wanting to confront
Binubulbo ko lang
Sheogorath,
ang kita.
claiming
Na
that she had been
kailangan mo magano.
deceived in the bet. Sheogorath's inaction should not have counted toward the bet in her mind, but he merely replied,
Buti na relax taas na
"Nonsense."
walang
He
ulan
replaced
ngayon.
Firmina's whispers with silence, and that silence drove the writer into a mad rage. And he was mad. Sheogorath claimed his soul for his realm, a glorious mortal hated by all. For his success, the Mad One accepted Firmina's dreamers into his service, and they awoke mad. For the
May
Dreamweaver
huwag ka
learned that
papasikot.
without madness, there are no dreams. No creation.
Tignan mo
It was a
bukas.
lesson she would not forget. But Sheogorath is not someone always looking to teach. One cannot always learn from the
Biyahe
method
mong
to his
papasok.
madness, as Malakath discovered in Volume 12.
And has earned the fate of all who follow that path.
Nang
The
mga
tribe may yet survive, but only if you are willing to do what is right.
Before they had built the city of Orsinium to call their home, orcs were an ostracized people. They still kind of are, but it was worse then. And yes, I'm done with the dramatic summary Firmina got. Malakath's story is too long for that.
Oh my god, empty na
Although,
pala
if you
ano
want
ko.
to know more about Orc Dad, there's this video. But during this ancient time, the land that the orcs could find was won by their champions, their crusaders. We follow one such champion here, Emeg Grokera, the bastard son of a young maiden who died in childbirth. It started very Game of Thrones-like. Now, Meg was raised by the tribe's shaman, and on his 15th birthday, he forged
Walang
himself a suit
mag-art.
of scale armor and left
Oh
his
wait, I
village
can
for the
type
last
cookies
time
para
as an
dito.
orc crusader, as was their way. Word of his exploits reached home, and even Bretons would learn to fear him. He was approached by a stranger, speaking the language of the orcs despite not being one, and stated that he knew the young crusader through his exploits. The stranger presented Emeg with a sword, Ned
Okay.
Preskin, which, although tarnished and missing gems, the crusader considered a blade worthy of a great hero. While Emeg saw through the stranger's salesman tactics of bigging him up, he ultimately traded some furs, food, and some coin for the exotic blade.
Oh
By
my
morning, the
god,
stranger was gone,
naka-sleep mode
his
na pala ang
pockets
aking
heavy,
cellphone.
and his stomach full.
Dapat daw
It was a
matulog
few
na ako.
days before Ned Preskin would be unsheathed.
Nope,
Emeg enjoyed relative
nope,
peace,
nope.
hunting small game
Hey,
with bow and arrow.
ang
But
ating
he
thermal
eventually heard something
series. May
creak in
thermal
the fog,
video naman
and
tayo.
cautiously drew his blade. He was
Oh,
unsure what
cheers.
happened
6 to
next.
5
His
items in the
memory was
stats.
spotty at best, but he did remember being sent into a state of mad bloodlust, and an orc woman, perhaps a few years younger than himself, was covered in grisly wounds.
Ayaw mo lang
Brutalized
pansin
with his
mo,
sunlight.
kaya
In
nakasleep mo.
disgust, Emeg threw Ned Preskin away
Excuse,
and ran, leaving
excuse,
Nora's corpse in the woods. While her body was
excuse
covered in wounds,
me
her
na
face was
sex.
untouched, petrified with fear.
Sam,
And it was here that Sheogorath summoned Malakath. As an orc, she was a child of Malakath, but Sheogorath also claimed her to be a child of madness by her habits, and stated that it was time for the pair to have revenge.
Okay,
Sheogorath
so
would help Malakath hunt the murderer down, but in exchange, he would use a weapon of the Mad One's choosing, so that the soul of the criminal would end
optionally,
up in the Shivering Isles. With that, the father of the orcs materialized in front of the murderer, and with his mouth frothing with rage, he hewed his head from his shoulders with one swing, although he found himself surprised at his own bloodlust. He looked down to see the head, although severed, still alive, and Emeg Brokera spluttered that he was sorry.
introduction.
Horrified,
What use
Malakath
is a
found that
machine
not
without
only had he
power?
slain one of his orcs, but his own son,
Kita mo
whom
pati sa
he had
names
made
yung
whom he had
nakasunod.
blessed. As per their deal, Sheogorath took Ned Preskin from
Diba?
Malakath and the head of Emeg Brokera, walking away. Malakath knelt, hearing his son's hoarse pleas as the Mad One took him away, knowing that he had condemned
It's a
his
sign.
own son to the Shivering Isles. Ooh,
At TMC
damn,
House
what a
tayo
prank.
noon.
Yeah, it's better to be on Sheogorath's side than to be subject to one of his games. Speaking of being on his side,
Walang
I guess it's
papasok.
time to look at those who worship him, if you can get behind worshipping that bloody Nora.
I suppose an introduction is in order. I,
Government.
Sheogorath, Prince of Madness.
If you've watched my other Daedric Prince videos, then you'd know that this section tends to be quite extensive, although this won't be the case here, because a lot of it is redundant. Everyone knows how unpredictable and dangerous Sheogorath is, and you have to be pretty mad to worship him in the first place. For instance, the Dunmer have him on the 4 do not mess with Daedric
Generating
Prince list,
RF is output
aka
from
the
call
House
side
of
only.
Troubles,
Fuel
along with
from any other
Malakath,
side without any
Malagbal,
upgrade and
and
is up
Mehrunes
to
Dagon.
40 RF per
It seems
tick.
like most do not consider him as
Dynamis
evil
have
as the
internal
likes of
buffer
Malagbal
which
or
can be
Mehrunes
upgraded
Dagon, but his
using
sheer unpredictability makes him a difficult
integral
patron to worship.
components but not RF
It's impossible to know if you can get something out of
Dynamis will
Sheogorath, or if you're just going to be at the
automatically
centre of his
throttle
latest
with
prank. The only other major society I want to mention here is the
based on
Khajiit,
how
because
full this
Sheogorath,
buffer
just
is.
being a dressed up housecat,
When
is
empty, Dynamis
hilarious.
will work.
Look at him. This is real. I couldn't make this up.
When full,
As I said
Dynamis
in the
will work
intro
10%.
section, he is called the
Using
Skooma
fuel
Cat, and is
even
associated
through
with the drug.
its weight.
Skooma itself is made from moon sugar. and through the use of this hallucinatory
When did I
narcotic,
generate
he is known to share his madness.
Idol.
Think of it as a vessel for people to enjoy madness, but look, I know that according to my audience stats, 95% of you guys watching are adults, but I feel compelled to say, don't do drugs, kids. Anyway, the reason why he's called the Skooma Cat is hilarious, because this is a direct quote from an in-game book called Words of Clan Mother Anissi. Fadame, the Khajiit version of Padme and mother of all gods in this
So,
story, says
actually
to
meron
Shador,
ako.
her own son by the way, you are the Skooma Cat. For what is crazier than a cat on Skooma? You cannot make this
Familiar
up.
answered
This also
queries.
implies that Skooma is so old to the Khajiit that it is primordial, because Fadame dies before the creation of Mundus, the Elder Scrolls world, according to this story, meaning the Khajiit think that the drug, skooma, is older than the world they live in. Wild. If you want to know more about Padme, who you might also know as Sithis, I have a video on that specifically, but the Khajiit don't really see Sheogorath that negatively. He is seen as a bit of a trial, and apparently must be
Water,
overcome to go to
lightning.
Herma Mora's library, which seems like a strange thing in general, but he's also easily distracted by yarn. I'm not joking, that's straight up in ESO. Now let's get back to his human form. The cat one is just ridiculous.
Technically,
Sheogorath
this
isn't
powers
against
makes you
having a good
pipes.
time. We have the whole skooma thing
Let's
as
don't
evidence,
flex
and he has a loose association with a holiday called the Jesters Festival. Apparently it originated to celebrate a time when Uncle Sheo turned the whole world mad. Not entirely sure when this would have been. It was probably when we were all cooped up at home doing Zoom quizzes. That was a pretty maddening time. There was also a time when Sanguine, the Daedric Prince of staying up until 4 AM hammering Jaeger bombs, allegedly spiced things up at a festival in honour of Sheogorath, calling the Mad One the Cheese Prince. This shows the pair as
Black of
potentially
Cured
friends,
Robber.
which makes sense. There is
Robber.
a sort of madness when you're completely hammered. This
Robber.
also means that other Daedric princes are aware of
Vines.
Sheogorath's cheese addiction. Do with that what you will.
Oh my
Sheogorath
god, need
worship
ko ng
in general seems to be
vines.
reserved for smaller cults and pockets, rather than being wider spread, like her scene, or being treated like a patron goddess, such as Azura. This is quite different in his own realm, which seems to have strangely structured societies, having him act as a functional ruler. This is pretty weird for somebody who's meant to be mad, but the thing is, I'm
Okay,
not actually
mukhang
sure
marami man tayo
Sheogorath is mad.
magkukuhanan ng
I know that sounds
vines.
weird. He's literally the Daedric Prince of madness, but there's a strangely
Oh
calculating
no.
method to everything he does. He makes others mad, and his plans are so beyond anyone else that they seem mad. But he himself might not actually be mad. It's like Jack Sparrow. Everyone thinks he's insane, but he's actually very clever and just quirky. If you look at the Accords of Madness, everything he does is calculating and very intelligent, if devious. They come from a mind that can think clearly, which isn't associated with madness. Now granted, some people in the Elder Scrolls community still see him as mad, which is completely valid, but I like to think of Sheogorath as the prince of driving you mad, rather than the prince of being mad, if that makes any sense. He just seems to have fun in completely messing with people and driving them mad, and because he'll do whatever he can, once to get that done, he is completely unpredictable. This is sort of why he doesn't make sense to us. We cannot see the method to his madness. There is also a bit of a debate as to whether he's the most powerful Daedric prince, because he inherited Chigallag's power, although he obviously presents it in a different way. His true strength has nothing to do with his power. It's all in his intelligence, his cunning and his unpredictability. Everyone knows he's up to something, and yet they cannot stop it. They cannot see how to stop it, but they cannot see the winding path that Sheogorath takes. They see it as nothing but madness, but for Sheogorath, that path is as clear as day. the most dangerous part of it all is that he revels in this. I mean, at least he's having fun. Just look at his most famous artifact, the Wabberjack. It can straight one-shot people by turning them into sweet rolls. Let me put it this way, Neron's Dagon has a dagger that can rewrite reality to one-shot people, but Sheogorath's Wabberjack one-shots people by just turning them into a sweet treat. It's crazy. Thank you for watching episode 4 of my Daedric Prince series. Damn, 4 already. We're really getting through these. Only 12 left. It seems like Sheogorath is probably one of the biggest Daedric Princes, especially since he got a DLC all to himself. And perhaps that's why the Hermaeus Mora and Hircine videos did so well. For the next one, I'm thinking the ladies need some time to shine, so I'm leaning toward Azura or Nocturnal next. Or maybe even Meridia could work. Azura is probably one of the most interesting because she's straight up a patron goddess for an entire people, the Dunmer, and is one of the Khajiit's favourite. That's reasonably unique among Daedric princes, especially in the modern era of Elder Scrolls. But Nocturnal's Thieves Guild link is intriguing, and, well, you guys know I'm using that clickbait in that thumbnail, I mean, come on. Meridia being so anti-undead gives me a lot to work with too. Plus, that damned beacon. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and let me know who you want to see next. With some reasons too, if you can be bothered. Do the whole YouTube ritual thing of liking, commenting, and subscribing, and hopefully I'll see you in another video.
God, taas ng ping ko. And taas. Lag spike, lag spike. Ay, bibili nga pala ka ng Redstone Flux Cell. Robber. Water bucket.
So it's the technology. William, here is the technology. I've asked you to simply make it smaller.
Okay, sir, that's what we're trying to do, but honestly, it's impossible.
The Dwemer was able to build this in a cave! With
A
a
bunch of scraps! Rubble.
I'm not
The Dwemer.
The Dwemer. They subscribe to the Dr. Stone school of we can do anything with the power of science. Except they combine science with magic to do some of the craziest things in any fantasy setting. They made robots, gunpowder, although I'm pretty sure they never put it in a gun, geothermal energy, tuning forks that can rewrite reality, half the inventions you see on Nexus mods, a way to transcribe an Elder Scroll, which is bloody insane, oh, and the literal god. They made an actual god. There are so many mysteries as to how the Dwemer did this specifically, and if those unknown are even capable of recreating this technology, magic, or whatever you want to call it. But that isn't the main mystery around these Dwemer. No, the real question is, where in Mundus did they go? And that's even assuming they're on Mundus. This whole series will only meet with the aftermath of their disappearance. Well, there is this story. He barely counts. So why did they disappear? Where did they go? And what were they trying to achieve? Well, to answer all three questions effectively, we need context. So, strap into your Dwemer-made car, because today, we're looking at the Dwemer.
Do you like this place? It took me the better part of a decade to perfect it. Every stone and flower tells a story. Tales of how things were.
To understand where the Dwemer potentially went, we need to understand three things. 1. The Dwemer's relationship with the gods, or rather their lack of relationship. 2. Their relationship with everyone else, or again, their lack of a relationship. And 3. How their stuff actually works. Let's work backwards, beginning with their magic and how they're actually able to do basically anything they want with their technology. Of course, like any other fantasy dwarf, the Dwemer have an incredible understanding of forging and metalwork beyond practically anyone else in the world, letting them create their unique Dwemer metal alloy and their grand cities, which still stand sort of functional thousands of years later. To this day, this Dwemer metal alloy cannot be recreated, although it can be reforged, sort of like Valyrian steel in Game of Thrones. Still, metalworking alone doesn't explain, all of that. The Dwemer are famous for a type of magic called tonal architecture, the manipulation of sound to alter reality, not too dissimilar to the Thu'um or Dragon Shouts, although it's less of a language for the Dwemer and more of an art. Tonal architects were known to use their voice in their art, and were known to utilize it for mining, medicine, architecture, and even psychology, showing its versatility. Speaking of psychology, they wore Dwemeri tonal attenuators, or essentially Dwemer building helmets, to prevent them from being affected by their own magic, which allowed them to bend weaker-willed minds, somewhat similar to the Bend Will Shout. And I do want to preface that this seeming relationship between the Thu'um and tonal architecture is more than just a coincidence. Both are examples of the third walking way, one of the methods to reach apotheosis, essentially becoming a god. And if you want to know more about becoming a god yourself, at least in the Elder Scrolls world, check out this Talos video. But this is something I want you to remember for later, because godhood is more of a goal than anything else for the Dwemer. And while tonal architecture gave them access to one of these walking ways, specifically the Prolix Tower, it wasn't really enough for them. They seem to have made tonal architecture pretty accessible too, with an example of their tools coming from tonal tuning forks. Yes, I wasn't joking about tuning forks being able to rewrite reality earlier. It's not just the Dragonborn with overpowered forks. They also had a bunch of other complete bollocks at their disposal, including automatons powered by soul gems, which we see all the time in Skyrim, helmets that let them use telepathy, even over very long distances, airships, and then there's Aetherium, which is a mineral that might have ties to Aetherius itself, and, well, you can get 2 star signs with the Aetherium crown. Somehow. Long story short, Dwemer magic is less advanced technology and more reality warping cheating. I mean, I can't say anything. I know console commands like the back of my hand. Then there's the Dwemer's relationship with the Divine. They, don't really have a relationship with the Divine. Well, not a good one anyway. You see, unlike practically everyone else, the Dwemer don't worship any god that we know. And emphasis on the we know part of that, although we do know that they hated the Daedra and scorned their worshippers, which put them into conflict with the Chimera, essentially the older version of the Dunmer, who are known to worship the 3 good Daedra, who really aren't all that good. I mean, Thal's in it. The problem is, we don't have a lot of records from the Dwemer, only other people's interpretations. They didn't really make it easy for others to learn from them. One of these main interpretations comes from Vivek, and according to him, the Dwemer preferred their gods of logic and reason. We don't know if this is literal, as in there are gods of logic and reason, or if this is metaphorical, and the Dwemer's gods are
Oh my
logic
god,
and
bakit
reason.
inaantok
I'm
na
more
ako?
inclined to believe the latter, since this is
Bakit ako
more in line with
inaantok?
the
Dapat
Dwemer
hindi
we
ako
know.
inaantok.
Arrogant, powerful, and letting absolutely nothing stop them from doing whatever they want, including morals and, well, the rules of reality. They clearly worshipped something though. There were Dwemer temples, with Arena having one in a place called Fang Lair. Although Dwemer religion is apparently one of the most complicated puzzles that scholars studying these deep elves face, and that's taking their technology into mind. Basically, Bethesda hasn't got around to writing anything about Dwemer religion. That's my conclusion, but what I
Oh
want you
my
to
god,
take away is that they
machine
clearly have
brain.
little or no respect for the gods that we are familiar with and are worshipped across Tamriel. That's sort of why they end up getting into trouble with a lot of other people. Now the Dwemer will fight anyone, including each other, with the only thing really
chromatic
stopping them being
stealing god.
geography. Well, not the Rorken clan. The Rorken clan, the guys behind both Spellbreaker and Volendrung, which later became Daedric artifacts, namely of Periite and Malakath, went on a big old journey west. I have a Malakath video if you want to know more information about how Volendrung came into the Daedric kingdom. The Rorken clan's journey to become Hammerfell, they fought the Nords, specifically the Great Mage Shalador, the guy whose statue stands in the centre of the College of Winterhold, and it should be noted that this beef with the Nords is a historical one for the Dwemer. When Ysgramor's line still ruled Skyrim, they got into a war with High King Gelir, probably one of Skyrim's greatest tactical minds, who conquered several dwarven cities including Mzulft, although this was because the Dwemer came fresh from a civil war, known as the Ethereum Wars, which we learn about during the Lost to the Ages Skyrim quest. Long story short with that one, a bunch of cities worked together to forge Ethereum equipment, but because these Dwemer cities tended to act more like city-states, each city wanted more control over the stuff, so they started murdering each other for it. Anyway, the Nords aren't the only rival to the Dwemer, for their main foe is the Kai'mer, with whom they disagree on a fundamental level, mocking them for their Daedra worship. Their many conflicts in the past seem to have stemmed from territorial disputes, with the Dwemer taking up residence in the Velothi Mountains, while the Kai'mer made their home in Morrowind. While the Dwemer had all these technological advantages, the Kai'mer had the power of gods and, well, not quite anime, but enough juice to compete. The most famous of these wars was the War of the First Council, but we'll get to that later. I'm still trying to talk about all the people the Dwemer were at war with, and the last we have to mention is the Falmer.
Oh no.
After Ysgramor and his boys
Oh my
arrived in
god,
Skyrim the
umuulan.
second time around, which was after the Snow Elves destroyed the Atmoran city of Sarthal, they found themselves getting the belt. Once the final leader of the Snow Elves fell, the Snow Prince, being welched by a child, it's a long story and I'll probably do that in another video,
Need ko ng machine
Skyrim was
casing, na
effectively
need
lost
ng
to the
chromatic
elves.
steel
These Snow
ingot.
Elves fled to
Yung
their neighbours
chromatic
for
steel
sanctuary,
ingot,
but the
nawala
Dwemer, being
ako.
pretty awful hosts, fed them toxic fungus to make them blind and force them into servitude.
Market.
Yeah, if you haven't figured it out
Bounty.
yet, the Dwemer are arseholes, but they're mer. It's kind of part of the package. Anyway, as time went on, the now blind Falmer, with a new perverted culture, managed to start a rebellion, a great subterranean war known as the War of the Crag. Now leading up to the disappearance of the Dwemer, these dwarves were at war with the Kai'mer, the Falmer, and had the Nords charging over the horizon, leading to a great nexus point. The final
Maghanap na
battle
lang kaya
of
ako
the
ng
Dwemer,
bayong.
the Battle of the Red Mountain.
What a
Bam,
fool.
badam,
I'm a
badam,
god.
boom.
How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence.
We're almost done with the context, I promise, but in the Red Mountain, the Dwemer discovered the heart of Lorkhan. You see, the story goes that shortly after the creation of the world, Lorkhan had his heart ripped out by the god Trinamach at the behest of his lord, Auriel, following a great war between elves and men. With his legendary bow, Auriel fired his brother's heart into the sea, and the island of Vardenfell, where the Red Mountain stands proudly, was formed. Now if you want to know more about Lorkhan, guess what, I also have a video about him. But once the Dwemer had discovered the heart, they immediately got to work to use it as a power source for the most ambitious project ever, the New Medium, a giant mech with the powers of a true divine. To do this, the tonal architect, Kagranak,
Black
made tools to
chromatic
harness the power of
ink.
the heart with the intention that this artificial deity would push the entire Dwemer people into ascension, although we're not quite sure what ascension means, and we also don't know if Dumak, the king of the Dwemer, knew about the whole god mech plan. He pleaded innocence when confronted by his old friend, Indral Nerevar, apparently, but because the plan was intended to ascend all Dwemer, I highly doubt that Dumak didn't know about it, especially because the construction of the New Medium caused the Kai'Ma to go to war with the Dwemer. If he was really innocent, he probably would have given Kagranak up, not backed him up for a war. At the time, the Falmer were in the middle of their revolt, and when the Nords heard the heart of Lorkhan was found, they summoned the ghost of one of their greatest heroes, Ysmir Wulfhalf, and the spirit of Lorkhan himself, to lead them to reclaim the heart and revive their patron god. Thus, while in Italy all roads lead to Rome, here all roads led to the Red Mountain, and the ground for one of the greatest battles in Tamriel's history was set. But we don't have objective details of what actually happened. There are conflicting reports depending on the perspective you're looking at. They either largely come from Nord or the Kai'Ma/Dunmer perspectives. For the sake of this video, we will be looking at Vivek's perspective predominantly, because it focuses on the Dwemer more, and while the Nords were certainly part of the battle, they were definitely the biggest losers. When they rolled up with Lorkhan, Wulfhalf and Orc mercenaries in tow, don't really know how that happened, the Kai'Ma and Dwemer suddenly remembered they hate Nonmer more, or something. They got together to deal with the Nords, and like that, they packed up and went home. Yeah, Vivek doesn't really mention the Nords that much, but other perspectives state that Wulfhalf got turned back into ash. The Nords got their butts kicked so badly they rethought their entire philosophy around the Thu'um. Oh, and Shaw's ghost got buried under the Red Mountain, which boots them out of the conversation early on during the battle. Yeah, fighting the divinely backed Kai'Ma and the stupidly technologically advanced Dwemer at the same time is not the greatest idea the Nords have ever had, even if they had their Thu'um powers back then. Anyway, the moment the Nords get sent back home, the Dwemer and Kai'Ma get right back to tearing each other apart. You see,
Gusto ko
Dagoth
mag-vote
enters
kaso
the
ang mahal
picture,
ng
and
aking
he's what we call in the
vote.
business a shit stirrer. He's the one who told the Nords about the heart of Lorkhan, and he's also the guy who snitched on the Dwemer to the Kai'Ma about the New Medium. The dude's a rat. A really funny rat. Lord here is the reason why the relationship between King Dumak and Indral Nerevar, which was once strong, fell to bits, causing the war to start. His deception hadn't quite been found yet, and when Nerevar managed to bring the majority of the Dwemer forces out of the Red Mountain through his tactics, he brought Dagoth and some companions into the mountain. There he confronted his old friend, Dumak, and his chief tonal architect, Kagranak. Nerevar and Dumak got into a fierce battle that only once close friends could, and both collapsed from grievous wounds. Threatened by Dagoth which, I mean, let's be honest, you don't really want to be in a room alone with Dagoth, Kagranak panicked and used his tools on the heart of Lorkhan, but right then and there, every single Dwemer vanished. Every single one. Well, except for this guy. He was in a different dimension at the time. Now after that, which we won't focus on too much, Nerevar dies, Dagoth kinda dies, the Tribunal used the tools of Kagranak on the heart of Lorkhan to become gods, breaking a promise made to Nerevar, which led to Azura cursing the Kai'Ma into the Dunmer. Dagoth got better, Nerevar reincarnated into the Nerevarine, and we still don't know where the Dwemer went. I am skipping a lot of the aftermath in this video, but because we're focusing on the Dwemer, and the Dwemer just vanish here, it's not really that relevant. It should also be noted that the New Medium didn't get fully activated, and that this action from Kagranak was pretty last minute. So what were the Dwemer originally trying to do? And what actually happened? Well, We don't know. But we can theorize. Game theorize. Bring in the map pack gifts.
Ask and I will answer truthfully. Just know that the truth often fails to satisfy.
Wait, so
You expect something
what
grand,
if itong
but I
Spargos
promised you the truth.
to ay
So, dwellers around the world vanished, even those in Hammerfell. Where did they go? To figure that out, we need to work out the original plan from the Dwemer. It is theoretically simple, yet complicated when you try to unpick it, but long story short, the Dwemer were in search of eternal life. Although the form that the Dwemer intended is unknown. We don't know whether they wanted to live properly or just live forever. One theory is that the Dwemer were looking to their past in search of eternal life, sort of similar to what the Altmer are doing now. You see, Ulmer apparently come from a land called Almiris, descending from the Elnathay, immortal spirits, who were the first to inhabit the world. As the world was being made, these Elnathay began to lose their immortality, and become the still long-lived elves we know. The Dwemer's plan could have been to rewrite this, and turn themselves back into the old Elnathay, thus giving them that immortality they're looking for. They could also be looking to detach entirely from Nirn, and burst into Aetherius like the Magna Gi, godly beings who began helping in the world's creation, then burned out because they were losing their powers. Thus, the Dwemer could have been looking to go fully Magna Gi, and be immortal in Aetherius, a realm of theoretically godly beings. Perhaps these were the gods of logic and reason that Vivek was talking about. Because of Ethereum, a resource that the Dwemer cared about so much, which has potential links to Aetherius, perhaps getting to Aetherius was the goal. This would explain the disappearance of the Dwemer, and maybe they were never looking to stay in Nirn to begin with. This could explain why they were relatively unbothered by the Falmer's rebellion, and didn't seem to be too bothered by fighting almost everyone they could. Still, that's assuming the Dwemer succeeded. And what are the chances they didn't? Well, pretty high.
Iwasan natin fatality.
Theoretically, if the Aetherius idea happened, that would mean the soul of the Dwemer would be transported to Aetherius en masse. And whilst we do see the soul of the Dwemer, this could be a special case, since we see them in Morrowind but not in Skyrim, so perhaps these are the soul of the Dwemers who were slain before the Battle of the Red Mountain. This would mean that only the Dwemer who survived we'll go with that, got transported to Aetherius. This makes some sense, I think. Still, the War of the Crag was centered in Skyrim, and we don't see a single Dwemer ghost. But we can talk to one of them. Radak. Initially asking you to leave an unspecified bit of evidence against the in a Dwemer ruin under Mournhold, which is a bunch of ashes around the so maybe the heart of Lorkhan just it's ruins we see in Morrowind and Skyrim don't have any ashes except for this Another question is whether the gods themselves would actually fly all the world at once, and essentially explode into a race, or if it's a possible side effect of misusing the heart of Lorkhan. To be honest, I can't rule either out. What I've said before about the Dwemer, it doesn't really seem like they're so perhaps there were plenty of gods chomping at the bit to ruin the itself. So perhaps in Oblivion somehow. about, I highly doubt it's true, because at least one of my friends would brag about it. And theoretically, unless more, I will be the one looking for the the device that caused their disappearance. You know, I'm beginning to think I should rename this channel to Nobs' Context. It's kind of in the name. Lorcan is known as a god and champion of humanity, and he's known to be a trickster who helped make the world. Time and with blood, for this point specifically though, the space. He essentially helped create the space this specific sphere seems to be an out-of-game allocation. It comes from the taking to the point of salt, although some sort of Akatosh. Well, Akatosh might not be the twin. It's a long story which I cover in this Akatosh video, but for the sake of simplicity, Akatosh is Lorcan's twin. That's what we're going to go with here. Now, Akatosh is the dragon god of time, and as the twin and opposite, it would make sense for Lorcan to be the god of space. It's Pokemon logic. Dialga and Palkia, time and space. Akatosh and Lorcan, same thing. Space, using or rather and if there was something timey-wimey going on, there would more than it should be noted that the new medium can but it does seem that the Dragon Break and Daggerfall, which makes all the endings canon, was a retroactive thing from Bethesda. But back to the Dragon. There wasn't a Dragon Break around the battle. And it does seem like an event that could have caused one, especially because there are so many perspectives. I couldn't find proof of one, and feel free to correct me here. I'm pretty sure time travel isn't. That leads me to one more theory. What if the Dwemer were taken to the void? Again, for the sake of simplicity, what you need to know from this is that most of the could have been transported to the void. This would theoretically Although I am assuming their souls were sent there, if it were just their bodies, then a bunch of Dwemer are floating in space, Viltrum style. Yeah, then they would all be dead. Still, is this what the Dwemer actually would have wanted? I would assume not, since they are all about creation and pushing the boundaries. It is often painted as a place Padme is exiled to prevent them from causing more chaos. So I don't think this is an ideal location for the Dwemer and their eternal lives. They could perhaps be thralls of Sithis in the Void too, with their hubris leading to their ultimate punishment, ironically coming from their ultimate creation. And there's a thematic reason as to why I think this would work. This is very out of game, but the Dwemer do seem to have a lot of ancient Greek myth elements, specifically from Hephaestus, god of the Forge. The many Dwemer automatons are one example of this, since the word automaton was made by the ancient Greeks, and Hephaestus was known to make essentially bronze robots. One example of this, who resembles the Numidium, is the great bronze giant Talos. This is also all happening in a giant volcano, the Red Mountain, similar to Hephaestus' forge in Mount Etna. A major theme in Greek myth is a negative character trait, being the downfall of a Greek hero. Sometimes it's wrath, as is the case with Achilles and Heracles. Well, technically adultery did Heracles in, but wrath got him into trouble multiple times. In any case, the most prominent negative character trait among Greek heroes is hubris, and that is something the Dwemer have shown as a collective throughout their history. Going after power and eternal life the way the Dwemer have, as well as mocking the gods, specifically the Dunmer ones, clearly shows their arrogance and hubris. This hubris, especially against the gods, is always punished in Greek myth, and if we follow this story template, the Dwemer, for their perversion of a god's heart, are punished too. Thus, they get their eternal life, but it doesn't come in the way that they want. This makes more thematic sense to me, but unfortunately, for other out-of-game reasons, I don't think this is going to be the case. In truth, there probably isn't an answer because Bethesda hasn't decided on one. The mystery here is more intriguing than having a real answer. And more than that, keeping answers vague also gives Bethesda more narrative options. Without committing to an answer, Bethesda can really do whatever it wants with the Dwemer, and can even choose to bring them back in some format, although I highly doubt this will be the case. The Dwemer being this long-gone civilization with more questions than answers is just too good to waste on actually giving any real answers. This also means they can go even more abstract with the Dwemer, kind of like how the modding community does. Someone bring back some airships. But it also saves Bethesda from something else. You see, I don't think the answer has ever been concrete, and it does seem like there are some inconsistencies. The Ash in the Tribunal Morrowind DLC conflicts with what we know about the Dwemer's disappearances, and the lack of Dwemer ghosts in Skyrim compared to Morrowind only raises more questions. If you don't give any answers, you don't need to address these questions. Chances are we'll see more Dwemer-related things in The Elder Scrolls 6, since it's more than likely taking place in either Hammerfell or the wider Iliac Bay, and that region is famous for its Dwemer ruins. Hammerfell has the giant city of Volenfell, once home to the Rorken clan. I wouldn't expect any answers here though, especially because of the distance from the Red Mountain. Just more theories.
Hear me out now. What if Shadow Bonnie is actually Darkiplier because they're both shadow people from the Shadow universe, which probably means that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is involved too, which would make it a film theory. You laugh! You laugh! But it could be a real thing. It makes sense! It makes so much sense!
So, all in all, my bet is the Dwemer were transported en masse to either Aetherius or the Void. Those would be my guesses, although I doubt Todd Howard would give you a straight answer if you asked him. So, give me your weirdest and wildest theories about the Dwemer. I reckon you guys can be pretty creative. The Dwemer are one of the best elements in the Elder Scrolls in my opinion, and arrogant, technologically advanced, not dwarf elves, who are also complete bastards, are great fun, but that element is enhanced by their mystery. I love theorizing about this one, but I think this is one of the few times where I don't actually want an answer from Bethesda. It will just feel underwhelming. If they do give us one though, I really hope I'm right somewhere here. Anyway, please do the whole YouTube ritual thing of liking, commenting and subscribing, and if you enjoyed this video, I hope to see you in another one later down the line. Now, time to find my Dwemer train mod, like the London Underground, but Skyrim. Yes.
Bells on the docks, they cry out for the mortal day. And winds sing the dirt for the words we never could say. And sails fly at half-mast in the color of evening's hue. And tears break the silence for the children we almost knew.
Oh my God, baka mag-explore na lang ako.
When dawn kissed the ocean, from the golden light came our birth. And when dusk falls on the harbor, to the golden shores we will return.
Flats was the real victim here. A victim of a society that's riding down a violent road to nowhere. A road I call Violence Road.
Sorry I'm late, class.
Last Dragonborn.
I can't believe you beat up a new student. I'm going to kick your butt.
Marak says this line to us if you arrive in Apocrypha after defeating Alduin.
So you have slain Alduin. Well done. I could have slain him myself back when I walked the earth. But I chose a different path.
And this got me thinking as to whether Marak could have actually done what we did. Of course, because he's as old as dirt, Marak potentially could have encountered Alduin on several occasions, but it does seem like he made a conscious effort not to directly confront the World Eater. So, were Marak's words the truth, or were they bravado from a man trying to hide his potential fear that his rival may outdo him? He's got a supreme poker face, or at least a cool mask, so it's hard to tell if he thinks he's telling the truth. Marak does seem arrogant enough to believe that he could best anyone, but what do the facts say? Well, let's have a look at it in detail and see how two of Skyrim's most powerful adversaries match up against each other. Marak versus Alduin. Who would win?
Felling Alduin was a mighty deed, and I thank you for it. He would have proved troublesome to me.
Before we look at this battle, we need to look at the two scenarios in which the pair could have actually fought. Scenario 1 is where we, the last Dragonborn, don't defeat Alduin before confronting Marak, and after he's freed from Apocrypha, with Jon Skyrim out of the picture, Tentacle Mask here has to delete the firstborn of Akatosh to dominate the world, or accomplish whatever he wants to do. He clearly knows that he would have had to fight Akatosh if his dialogue is to be believed. Scenario 2 is where Marak doesn't dismiss the Sovngarde trio's approach to deal with Alduin and joins them to end the rule of dragons in Skyrim. Or at least end Alduin's rule and maybe put himself as the replacement. These two are worth looking at because both have Marak and Alduin at different levels of power, or means to deal with each other's strengths. Marak himself seems to have grown considerably in knowledge between his time on Nirn and when we meet him in Apocrypha, which does make sense, given that he spends literal thousands